And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the great Mark Pavlik, the volleyball coach of Penn State University. Now, I went to UPenn. He's coaching at Penn State. You can go to either place, just don't go to the State Penn.
That's right.
Mark,
And you would be, what's real interesting is certainly on the men's side, or at least early in my career, you go out to California to play, and the people that were working the matches, not the coaches, not the players, but the scorekeepers, you'd go up to sign the lineup card, and next thing you know, you'd see University of Penn. And I'd say, oh, do they have a men's volleyball program? Well, no, it really isn't. It's the University of Pennsylvania, a very fine and upstanding institution, may I say, but they don't have men's volleyball. So we managed to get through that.
That's it. Well, you guys do, and that's why you're here with us. So let's talk mindset, Coach. I'm real excited. We had some technical difficulties last week, but we're pushing through the adversity. Like you said, this is the adversity year, and it's the life lessons.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's going to be interesting years from now when you take a look at the kids that are coming through school, and I don't necessarily mean college, but high school and elementary school, and they're going through this. What's the impact this is going to have on them and how they look at the environment that they're in 10, 20 years from now, when they can say, well, back in my day. So it'll be very interesting.
Right, exactly. And one of the things we spoke about a little bit last week was how performance is performance.
Yeah.
So, like you said, and it could be in sports, it could be in the performing arts, music. It doesn't make a difference. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my wife is the head coach of the Juniata College women's volleyball program. And she's been involved with 2 national champions, and she grew up under the tutelage of the winningest volleyball coach in college, and that's Larry Bach. More wins than any Division I, II, or III or men's coach in there. And here's 2 volleyball coaches who have a son who is totally into musical theater. And as we've watched him develop, and we've sat in rehearsals and performances, the more she and I have talked about the same thing that we're watching we do in our gyms. And I think it's fascinating. Sit there and you'll, in a rehearsal, and you'll hear somebody say, no, the other left foot. Yeah, I've used that. Or, hey, I want your eyes. Let's focus here. And it really is very, very similar to what Heather and I are used to, and in the environment that we've spent most of our adult life seeing.
Absolutely. Talk about some of the common mental mistakes that you see they make, not necessarily technically, but just, things that slow them down mentally, whether it's thinking too much about the outcome, looking bad in front of other people, all that.
Yeah, I think that's the first one. I think you got to be where your feet are. And I don't care whether, you're blocking something for, one of the acts that you're in, or you're blocking alignment, or you're trying to block a volleyball. I think you don't get caught up in oh my God, what happens if I succeed or if I fail? This is now all of a sudden you're getting ahead of yourself. And talking with my son, the same thing holds true there. We kind of said, you don't remember when we asked you to clean your room. How do you remember all these lines? And he basically said, when everything gets blocked out and he knows where he's supposed to be, as long as he knows where he's supposed to be, he says the lines come easy. And that started us thinking that, as long as you know where you're supposed to be, everything else should take care of itself. I think one of the easiest things, certainly in the volleyball world, to get ahead of yourself is serving. You go back to the line, and if you go back with the idea of, okay, I'm looking at the scoreboard. If I get this point, we're only down by 1. If I don't get this point, we're down by 3. How do I now? And then the talk and everything's blown out of the water. But if you go back and just execute the skill without regard to the outcome, and take care of whatever mechanics you're taught, whether it's for us the toss, take a deep breath, make sure you know where your feet are, get a toss, go up and get it, hit it well. I'm willing to let the guys understand that that's what you need to do. And then if you have a good point, the other thing about it, Gene, is, we talk about recovery, right? Everybody screws up in any performance arena. And everybody talks about recovering from losing, from not executing. I think it's just as important to be able to recover from success. Again, you go back to the serve, and this has happened to our guys, this has happened against us, where server goes back, good toss, great jump serve, boom, hits the ball at 68 miles an hour, great seam, ace. And the server grabs the ball, goes back for a second serve, and he starts thinking, I didn't give that all I could. I didn't jump as high as I didn't hit it as hard as, just watch this. Toss. People in the first row of bleachers have to watch out because there's shrapnel flying at them. And I think that's the same thing for any performance, whether you're performing on a piano, on a stage, and you understand, hey, I am in the zone. I am doing this. And boy, this is so much fun. And this is what it's going to look like. And I think you got to recover from success to bring you right back to where your feet are.
Absolutely. That's a huge point right there, that whether it's failure or success, whatever happens, you got to put it behind you and you got to move forward. That's big.
Right. Those are just outcomes, right? And I think in performance, you want to be able to replicate whatever it is you're doing to the best of your ability over time. And if you're worried about what's going to happen before or after, you're not worried about what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. Coach, do you see it in their eyes sometimes right before they serve? I've spoken to many coaches before, and they said they could see it either before they serve or even while they're serving. They either lose focus or they're looking at something they don't normally look at. What's your experience?
I don't know if I see it in their eyes. I think as a coach, you're in the gym with them for a long amount of time, watching them try to master some of these skills. And obviously, when they're developing routines and you're there with them, you tend to notice who does what when. And in competition, those little traits start to pick up again. You know that if somebody's going to grab the ball with his right hand and dribble it and then turn his back on the court, you've seen it so much. And then when you see that start to differ, then the question pops up, is he ready to do this the way I've seen him do it? I think that's really the telltale sign of, okay, let's find a way to get you to refocus, and hopefully, we've seen enough of them in the practice gym to help them out in matches.
Yeah, and I've heard that before, like what you said right there about it's the change in the behavior that you notice. And that's what a lot of body language experts talk about. They say, some people would say, oh, if someone touches their nose, that means they're lying. And they said, well, no, if that person normally touches their nose, they might not be lying. But if it's a change in their typical behavior, that's when you tend to see something's a little bit off.
And I think that's one of the great things about bringing the guys into a practice gym and really letting them work their own personality into their skill development. I think we don't necessarily want to develop everybody the same way, right? I think each and every one of us have been gifted differently. Some of us can jump, and some of us no longer can get off the floor without the aid of an elevator. So, I think the guys come in and you try to make them believe in their strengths. And you try to build around that, because sometimes I think that's one of the tougher things to overcome with this generation is the pressure that they've been around to identify their weaknesses. and to make their weaknesses stronger. I think many times we've forgotten to believe in our strengths and to build that strength even stronger, and to enable you to do things at a higher level. You've got to believe in what you're good at. And sometimes I think, it's easy for this generation to identify their weaknesses. I think it's not as easy for them to believe in their strengths when they know that I'm not real good at this. No, you're not, but we're not asking a 6'7" guy to do something that a 5'11" guy has an easier time doing. So, understand, be the best 6'7" guy you can be, and be the best 5'11" guy you can be.
Right. We've seen that a lot with athletes that could give a laundry list of their improvement areas, but then when you ask them, what are you doing well? They can't name them. And they might be a very high level performer, all American level, and their confidence is in the toilet because their entire focus is on what they need to get better at. And it's good they're focusing on what they need to improve. But like you said, for confidence, it's so important you go out there thinking about what you're good at and developing that.
I totally agree with you. You've seen this. Isn't that what, when you get into the favorite versus the underdog setting, the underdogs are being told, listen, hang in there, hang in there. Make sure that favorite understands they've got to fight harder than they ever expected to fight against you. And then if that occurs, is that what's happening to the favorite, where they're looking at the things that they can't do against this underdog that they originally thought they could do? And the underdog, if you're the favorite, you let them hang around. Now they're starting to believe, hey, I can do this. And I think that's where that example of you got to always believe in your strength comes from.
Right. And that's why it's a big thing, that aggressiveness and having that killer instinct, of course, fair and square and by the rules. But when you're out there, you don't feel sorry for the team. And if you're beating them, you pound them into the ground. You want them to be scarred after they play you. So they got a lot to think about after that.
Well, I agree with that. I also think the other corollary to that is, after you're done, you want to walk away saying, yeah, our strengths are pretty good.
Right.
So.
Right. And that's even better, because this way you're focusing on yourself and you're not putting the focus back on them, who you have no control over anyway.
Right. Yeah. Because they practice too. They have a say in the outcome of competition.
Right. Absolutely. Now talk about the high level athletes you coach, their mood, their demeanor, their emotional level. One of the things I've seen is that if they change their personality too much before a competition, that tends to be a little bit of a red flag. Like if they normally are more of a talkative person, more lighthearted, and then they change that up and become super serious before a competition, usually that's something to look out for. I mean, different players know where they need to be. What have you seen with that?
We've been very blessed to have three of the very best players at their position in the world. Maddie Anderson, Aaron Russell, and Max Holt, who all compete for the USA national team. They've been involved at the highest levels. And that's a great point, Gene. I think that as I talk with them now, Maddie and Max were 2008, 2009 era players who graduated then. Aaron Russell was 2016, 15, 16, somewhere around there. They're the same people. They're the same people now that they were as they were going through the formative college years. I think that's truly one of the best measurements of people who understand who they are. And once you understand who you are, I think it's easier to understand how to get better. Because let's face it, the more elite level you are, the more the changes that you want to make become smaller. Maybe it's not, I've got to become a better passer. It's, I've got to become a better passer on ball served to my left above my waist. And if you start to understand how you've looked at the game over the course of your entire career, and you stay in that same personality and understand yourself, I think it makes those steps a little bit easier to identify. And once you identify them, a lot easier to really go after and attack and get better at it. I talk with Maddie now, I talk with Max now, I talk with Aaron now, and they're the same people who want to get better, who want to compete hard, who want to be the best that they can be, and who want to be the best teammates they can be. So it's just refreshing to say, yeah, I know this guy because he was that way in our gym for 4 years.
Right. Absolutely. And I like the specificity also that you brought up of when we're talking about what we're going to work on, our improvement areas, the more specific, the better. It's like asking if you needed help from one of your professors. You say, oh, I'm struggling in my English class. Well, is it reading or is it writing? Okay, it's writing. Well, is it the pre-writing? Is it a stronger conclusion? Is it vocabulary? What is it? So pinpointing exactly what you need to work on. It seems like the best athletes do that better than maybe the good ones, and it separates them from the good from the great.
And then that takes us full circle back to the original point, that performance is performance. Right now, I've never picked up a trumpet in my life. And if I wanted to play the trumpet and somebody asked me, what do you want to get better at? I'm going to say playing the trumpet. But if you ask somebody who's lived with the trumpet, makes their living with it, what do you have to do to get better? I bet you they're telling you, well, here's what I need. Here's what I'm working on right now. So I think the more you perform, the more you play, the better you get at the game, but the understanding of what you're doing starts to hone in on, hey, I've seen this guy do that. I can do that, but I need to work on that part of it, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Talk about how you prepare your athletes mentally to deal with the pressure. I know we spoke about this in the past when you were telling me about making practice a lot of times more similar to competition. Talk about that a little.
Yeah, I've always been a big believer and have been brought up under my mentors that you train game-like. And there's a lot of different ways. This is where the coach starts to think about outcomes, right? You don't want players to look at the scoreboard, but that's kind of where we as coaches live. How do we get to the next point? How do we get to the next 5 points? And I think that what you want to do is there's always the goal to make your players more comfortable with being uncomfortable than they ever thought they could be. But then you start to say, well, the more you train something, the more you make that uncomfortable situation comfortable. So is it about understanding what's uncomfortable or understanding what you need to make become comfortable? Starting to spin in my own mind here, Gene. But I think what we try to do in our gym is just create situations every day that these guys will, when it happens in a match or when we're playing a match, it's like they've seen this movie before. They know what to expect from their teammates. They know what to expect from themselves. The things you can't recreate are the crowd noise, the fact that now there are more people involved that are emotionally reacting, and how that emotional reaction can affect people on the court. And I think that's a big one. I think you can always talk about blocking things out, but I think there is an energy that occurs during true competition that you have to understand is there, and it can't surprise you when it does happen. So we talk a lot in practice about, hey, let's make sure that in this serve and pass drill, I want you to think about last week's match. When were you most successful? When did you feel you were least successful? Can we replicate that? If we were serving for national championship point right now, what is your mechanics? What is your process? How are you going to get yourself ready to make this serve? I'm not worried about outcome, but are you ready to do the mechanics from the way we've talked about it all season? So I think we try to go into practices as opportunities to understand your strengths, understand the areas that you're trying to get better at, and try to do it all within a game-like situation. So I certainly don't have the keys to the car on that one. I think there are a lot better coaches out there who can do that much better than I can. But I firmly believe that you got to do it in game-like situations. You can't have the bulk of your practice be drills or approaches to things that never happen in matches.
Right. It's got to be realistic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just so they know that what to expect, so they're not taken off guard. Okay, maybe you can't mimic the exact conditions, but at least mentally they know, okay, this is what coach was talking about. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking back. I think that lesson, one of the first coaching jobs I had was my high school's middle school girls program. And this was the first time any of the girls had played volleyball. And so we practiced, and literally it was training skills. It wasn't how you play the game. It was like, this is the trumpet, right? And the one thing that I remember to this day, the very first match we played, won the toss, went back to serve. The referee blew his whistle, beckoned for the serve, and immediately the crowd, the opposing team, and our team started to cheer for our server. And you could just see the look on her face like, I've never been here before. I don't know if the serve made the 3-meter line on our side, but it stuck with me that I didn't do a good enough job in preparing them for what they would actually encounter. I think I've carried that with me for a while.
Yeah, makes sense. We'll talk about the mental jump going from high school to college, and what are some of the things you see with the players, and how they could best make that adjustment, and what are some of the common mental and emotional pitfalls?
I think it's a different animal. I think you have to be ready to make the commitment to your team, to your school, that every decision you become involved in affects a lot more people than it ever affected in high school. Now, I don't mean that it was you need to be there are more people involved. I think in high school you had your group of friends that you probably grew up with through school. You knew who they were. More than likely, you're from the same area. There's probably more of an outlook on life, on athletics at your school, on how things had been done. And because you were there with people you probably knew your coach since, so there's a comfort in this. You can go home after a match, mom feeds you, you have, study halls in school, and then you get to college, and then you're on your own. And you're being asked to get up at 7 a.m. to lift. And then after lift, you're being asked to make sure you get a good breakfast in you. And then you're being asked to go to 3 to 4 hours of class. Oh, and you're also asked that you got to stop by the training room because, you're worried about this. Your shoulder's just a little tense, but I've had that happen before. And then you're asked to get ready for practice. And then you go through a 2 to 3 hour practice. And you come out of practice and you're asked to go to study hall. And you're also asked to still get good nutrition in you. And you're asked to make sure that you're going to get good sleep. But you're demanded that you have to perform academically also. So all of this gets thrown at you. And I think that there's not one of those things, academics, social, or athletics, that are independent of each other. and you've got to make sure you find a way that they work. And I think one of the things that we see is that first semester for first year people coming in, that's the tough one. That's when things get thrown at them that they've never seen before, that their support system may not be just a walk across the street to mom and dad's. It may be a flight across the country. And they've got to rely on their teammates. They've got to rely on their professors. They've got to rely on the support system that exists at every institution that's out there. And I also believe that one of the things that happens in the 4 years that you're in college, you're surrounded. It's the only time in your life it's the last time in your life that you're surrounded by everybody who wants you to achieve success. You're surrounded by people who want you to achieve academically, who want you to achieve athletically, who want you to have a great social experience. And when things break down, there are people there to catch you and to put you in the right direction. At the very least, make it a learning experience. You get out of college, that ceases to exist. So you now have to learn how to navigate that college setting while still being a high performer academically, high performer athletically, and a great person off the court socially. And, I think that's the biggest thing. It's different for different people. The introverts, they're probably going to let you know a little bit sooner. The extroverts, I got this, everything's fine. But I think that's the biggest change, or the biggest challenge that kids coming in see, because athletically, chances are you're coming into a team that has people that have been lifting for 4 years. They've seen this movie before. They get it. They know they've advanced through that stage that you're in, and that has helped them grow. And generally, the first years, it's tough for them to be so comfortable so quickly. The kids that come in with great talent or a great desire to achieve, I think make those strides a little bit more easily than someone that comes in with the relative, I'm not sure what I'm going to school for, what's my academics, can I play at this level? I think there's something to be said for that. But I think the biggest thing that exists for them is they have to understand that the people around them want them to succeed, and you got to reach out if you have any questions, let alone concerns. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Reaching out, like you said, we talk about aggressiveness when we compete. We also have to be aggressive when we need to solve any other problems in life or any other challenges that come our way. And maybe that's the last question for you about during the whole COVID period of time. This year, next year, just the uncertainty. How do you tell your athletes to approach everything, and how do they continue to train and get better, even if the conditions aren't the same as they were in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think all of us are looking for that combination of that safe. With us, I think we've been blessed here at Penn State to have a great performance psychology department within the athletic department. Dr. Carl Olson, Adriana Napolitano have worked with all of our teams and have done a great job in just helping them navigate their way through a lot of what they're experiencing. And what we've tried to do through the last 9 months, 10 months now coming up, is understand that, yeah, this is different, but our core tenets, what we need to have done, we can't have that change. We've got to make that normal somehow. And I think what we've asked the guys to do is, men's volleyball is a little bit different because we have the championships in the spring. They're gone all summer. They come back with the normal students in the fall. We don't hit the ground running. So we've tried to make that time as normal as possible. We don't spend a whole lot of time with them over the summer. Look, you're tired of me. I'm tired of you. Go home, play, be with your friends, work the job that you got to work. If you need anything, we're here. I'll be in touch occasionally. And then bring them back in the fall and start our training. And we did that, and I think that worked pretty well. Now, it's a little bit different now because we've been off a little bit longer, maybe 2 weeks longer than we normally would have been. And we're coming back with some uncertainty. How, you look at what's going on with NCAA basketball games being canceled and postponed. Is that going to happen with men's volleyball? Who knows? But again, that's something we can't control. What we can control is getting them in here and making sure that they understand the things that they need to do, the things that they can control. They take their best effort and make that happen.
Absolutely. Controlling the controllables, forget about what you can't control. Exactly the same for volleyball, for school, for business, and for life. Mark, awesome stuff. Great information you gave there. I hope people are here with a notebook when they're watching the video because you gave a lot of great tips.
Well, thanks for having me, Gene. It's been a pleasure just having this discussion with you, and I truly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mark. Talk soon.
Thank you, Gene.
Take care.
You too.